Hello, all you Charlie Reynolds out there, and welcome to Undeclared Bajor.
Did you say Charlie Reynolds and I think Malcolm Reynolds? And I'm like, wait a second, that's not what we're doing.
Maybe they're related. You know, they're both these really bold, dynamic, risk-taking leaders. So, yes, that is new music that I totally already know what it sounds like when I'm recording this. So
that was the best music ever. I heard it totally.
I hope you enjoyed it. Yeah, this is Undeclared Bajor, the best Star Trek DS9 discussion podcast.
So let's not get out ahead of ourselves
on the internet. My name is Fletcher. About to say hello is Data.
Hey.
Today we're going to discuss Star Trek DS9 Season 6, Episode 1, A Time to Stand. Alternate title, Return of the Fedi. Okay. Excellent. We will be discussing spoilers up through this episode, but not after this episode, so it's safe to watch along with us if this is your first experience with Star Trek DS9. But we also spoil books, TV shows, or movies not related to Star Trek DS9. So make sure you watch all that stuff before listening to this podcast.
All of the stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Shawshank Redemption, Planet of the Apes, all of it.
I mean, Darth Vader turns into a Force ghost in Return of the Jedi, since we're doing...
Yeah.
There you go.
Depending on which... he's played by a different actor, depending on which version you watch.
I feel bad for the guy who got, cut out in later versions.
I just feel bad for the people who that's all they've ever seen, and then it's like, wait, who's that guy? Because that's not the guy that was inside the Darth Vader.
I think you assume that it's like, oh, that must be when he looked like younger.
Yeah, even though Obi-Wan Kenobi still has...
Yeah.
Like, Ewan McGregor isn't there. Anyway.
Maybe, Darth Vader just didn't look in the mirror very much after he got into the suit. So that's still how he pictures himself.
Oh, yeah, like his residual self-image, like from The Matrix, is still Hayden Christensen. Okay, I buy it. Yeah, this podcast is canceled. We're just going to complain about the special editions for an hour.
We could totally do that. I mean, you were the one who got a hold of like the de-specialized versions that one time, and then we watched those. And
there's even like more like despecialized like 4K versions now.
Ooh, man, now I gotta get those.
So yeah, I know. Anyway, A Time to Stand originally aired September 29th, 1997. It was written by Ira Steven Behr and Hans Beimler.
Ooh.
The Robert Hewitt Wolf era is at an end, as we discussed last time, and directed by Alan Craker.
Oh, I thought it was Kif Kroker. Okay.
No. Well, I was listening to the Delta Flyers podcast, and then they pronounced it Craker. I was like, oh, have we been saying it wrong this whole time? But they only mentioned it like once in passing, and so I went back to listen to them discuss an episode directed by him of Voyager, because they haven't gotten to his Deep Space Nine episodes yet. And then Garrett Wang calls him Alan Croker, but... Robert Duncan McNeil calls him Alan Craker, and then they have this big discussion about how some people pronounce it one way and some people pronounce it another way, and he just rolls with whatever.
So, well, that's a good attitude to take. I feel like he's like, I'll answer to whichever one you want to call me. It's an unusual name to be saying, so I'll figure out it's me either way.
Well, there's got to be some way that he says it himself, though, right?
One would assume, yeah. Maybe he mixes it up. I don't remember why I came up with... I was writing a story one time, and the main character was like some people knew him as like TJ, and some people knew him as JT, and he would just pick one of the two to use at any given time, and there was never, that I recall, I didn't come up with like a reason why he did that. That was just like the thing. So maybe he just picks one that he's feeling that day and goes with it.
Oh yeah,
good old Croker. Craker. I was going to say, if we disagree with the Delta Flyers, but you've established that we are the best Deep Space Nine discussion podcast, then I think ours would have to be correct. Right. Despite them being actual actors on the show.
Yeah, I mean, what do they know? Like, I tried really hard. I tried looking at his IMDb. I tried looking at his Wikipedia. I tried looking at YouTube to see if he has a website, but he doesn't. Or no, he doesn't have a website. He has a YouTube channel, but he only has 2 videos on there, and neither one of them is him pronouncing his own name.
Did you try calling his agent?
I did not think to do that. I tried looking for him on Twitter or X.
But X did not give it to you?
X did not give it to me.
It's a shame.
X promised me I was going to get it, but...
X did not deliver. It happened.
Oh, and it's in the memory of Brandon Tartikoff?
Yeah, so Brandon Tartikoff, that is one of the notes, obviously, that you would expect on this episode. The former chairman of Paramount Pictures, who died August 1997, it was Tartikoff who originally approached Rick Berman about doing a new Star Trek series, and it was Tartikoff's idea to do a stationary show as opposed to a starship.
Huh. Interesting.
So, he is the one who secretly stole this idea from...
Right. I didn't want to say that, but...
I said it. Not to speak ill of the dead, but he's been dead for a real long time now, so,
Although, listening to the Delta Flyers, which has Armin Sherman, he's always mentioning, original Star Trek was always wagon train in space.
Yeah.
And then the concept for Deep Space Nine was always Bonanza in space.
I was about to say, yeah, if you're going to call that wagon train, then this has to be Bonanza, right? Or
yeah.
Or another similar... This is like F Troop in space. I
don't know if, that was kind of what everybody had in mind, or if that's just, Armin Sherman's way of looking at it, but I was like, oh yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so we start with a previously on Deep Space Nine, which spotlights a lot of the exciting special effects from last episode.
Yep.
And also weirdly shows the proposal scene between Dax and Worf, but doesn't include the proposal part, and instead focuses on the line that they may never see each other again, which is immediately made a moot point, or at least will be in a few minutes.
Okay, so apparently there is a reason for this.
Oh, okay.
So, and I guess I have to get straight into it because this is one of those notes, but the season starts with this big multi-episode arc.
Uh-huh.
And the problem was this arc became such a big thing for the writers that they were worried that after the arc, people would be less interested in the show or think that the show was... So what they decided that's the reason that they had the scene between Worf and Dax in this episode with that whole discussion to let people know hey, after this arc is over, there's still interesting stuff happening. And you still have this thing that, they're waiting to do this thing. And so that in the previously on is trying to keep it in that same vein of hey, pay attention to this because this is a story that will continue past the arc. There's still stuff happening.
Sure, okay. It's we have not completely dropped everything that we are not focusing on right now.
Yeah.
Okay. And now the continuation. A fleet of beat-up-looking Starfleet and Klingon ships flies through space. On the bridge of the Defiant, Nog announces that the Jem'Hadar have finally cut off their pursuit. O'Brien comments that it's been 3 months of bloodshed with nothing to show for it, so presumably it's 3 months since the big battle at Deep Space Nine.
The entire summer vacation that,
right,
those of us who were kids watching on TV had was spent with giant off-screen battles.
Uh-huh.
It's a shame.
Big, awesome ones, yeah.
But there's a note about this opening flotilla scene.
Okay.
It says this is one of the last scenes entirely composed of footage of physical studio models, save for the CGI Defiant.
Huh.
To beef out the scene, the production staff built several new starships, kit bashing them out of parts from commercially available model kits.
Sure.
So I had to look up the term kit bashing because I was like, what is that thing?
Oh,
but
yeah.
it's just basically, you take stuff from kits and you stick it together and you make a new thing. But
yeah,
anyway.
I have seen I think Adam Savage's YouTube channel does this a lot, and I've seen other model making YouTube videos that have discussed kit bashing.
Oh, well, that's cool. Now you got a link to those in the links below. Maybe I will watch one of those.
Yeah, but the idea, this is an old special effects technique where you just buy a ton of model kits from the hobby store and then you just take all the parts and like bash them together into some new original creation.
And so of all these new ships that they created, Mike Okuda says those kit bashes were pretty much built and labeled at random. The VFX department put in a lot of time and effort to assembling the models, and they had a little fun with the names. A few of us from the art department even lent a hand. Some of the ships had authentic sounding names, but most of them had gag names. One might reasonably argue that Starfleet might have named a bunch of their ships after historic figures whose name just happened to be the same as several of the Star Trek visual effects department staff members. But some of the ships had rather impolite names that Starfleet would, and then in parentheses, probably not have approved of on any of its ships. In any case, everyone worked so hard that I felt it would not be appropriate to attempt to impose authentic names or numbering, especially since there was no chance any of it would be legible on screen.
Okay, so if you look closely, I guess there's going to be like the NCC 6969
probably
and stuff like that. Okay. Excellent. But there's no examples of these naughty ship names?
No, it doesn't. I'm very disappointed. It doesn't tell me any of them.
Man, that's something that I would buy at like a props auction.
Yeah, the 6969 classic.
But yeah, the war does not seem to be going well. Nog worries that they haven't heard any news from the 7th Fleet regarding some kind of important sounding confrontation at the Tyra system. O'Brien and Dax try to put on an optimistic act, but they're not very convincing. Then Dr. Bashir strolls into sickbay to find Garrick bruised up from hitting a bulkhead during the battle.
And complaining.
Oh yes. And the Bashir-Garrick gay subtext is back in full effect. And also, Dr. Bashir now has data-level supercomputing powers.
Oh yeah.
Which
He's always had those. You just didn't know.
Which isn't super sudden and annoying. And he has a not very optimistic calculation of their survival odds.
I mean, 37%? That's not so bad.
I mean, I tend to not like stuff that's less than 50, but...
Well, yeah, when it comes to your survival, you really want it to be higher than that, but what can you do?
I like that number to be more like 100, but... Also, Garrick is wearing a communicator badge, and to my amazement, he doesn't use it the entire episode.
Oh yeah, see?
Which is...
They knew you were expecting it.
Almost universally, when you see a character who never wears a communicator wearing one...
It's because they need it.
Yeah, almost certainly in that scene, they're going to be pressing it. In
the next scene, they might not have it anymore if they don't need it again.
Or it might even disappear between shots, but when they need it, it'll be back.
Yeah.
So Sisko and Dax hang out in the mess hall of the Defiant, wondering what their next assignment will be. And then Martok and Worf stroll on in. Dax is happy to see Worf, whom she hasn't seen in 5 weeks. So this isn't even the first time they're reuniting after the last episode.
No, yeah, it's all good.
So that dramatic, we may never see each other again. Don't even worry about that. Worf has something on his mind, though. Apparently some overpriced meddling wedding planner put in Dax's head that the hip new thing to do is to save the Targ sacrifice till after the feast at the wedding. But Worf wants a 100% traditional wedding with the sacrifice before the feast.
Has he even ever been to a Klingon wedding? Like, for real?
I have a feeling if I said no, then...
somebody would find an example.
Right. He was like, you went to the wedding in episode whatever. But yeah, Dax is like, okay, fine. And then she and Worf go off to do some activity that Sisko worries may result in broken bones. So I'm guessing it's like Batleth practice or something like that.
Yeah, obviously. In the Batleth practice studio on the tiny Defiant that has no extra room.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Yes, yeah, it's just dangerous stuff. They may break some bones.
I don't know if you notice in here, but this episode apparently has one of the longest teasers of ever in Star Trek, lasting just over 7 minutes. So we're still in the teaser portion.
I do remember thinking when the credits started rolling, it's like, oh, we didn't do the credits yet? So that tracks for sure. Then Bashir comes in to tell Sisko that their orders came in. So orders go through the doctor now, I guess.
Maybe he's still fleet liaison officer since
right.
Worf's gone on, a different ship or whatever.
Worf just never took that job back. Or yeah. Worf is gone with Martok. So okay, that's unnitpicked. I'll buy it. You would still think they'd send the orders directly to the captain.
To the captain, yeah. But, maybe Bashir was just on the bridge when the orders came in for the captain. And he's like, okay, I'll go tell him.
Yeah. So, hey, is the captain there? He's like, no, I think he's down in the mess hall. It's like, well, can you just... Okay, here's your orders. Can you pass them along?
I'm too busy to mess around.
Right. But yeah, so their orders are to report to Starbase 375. Oh, and also there's some bad news about the 7th Fleet. Or I guess we should say former 7th Fleet.
the dead people once known as the 7th Fleet.
Right. Yeah, so Sisko gets mad and he breaks the glass table with his fist.
There's a note that it was important to the writers during the composition of this episode that it not be all about huge space battles, but that there be an element of humanity to it. Uh-huh. According to Ira Stephen Bear, we knew that going into the war would make it easy for us to fall into the hero trap, where you concentrate on Star Wars type heroic space battles and stuff like that. But we really wanted to keep the human aspect of the pain of war. So we included that one moment that was human, of a father being concerned for his son.
Oh, is that what that was for? Okay.
I like the idea that, like, there's no humanity in Star Wars. It's just right. Giant space battles nonstop.
Back on DS9, Terok Nor. Dukat records a captain's log where he's very happy about the way the war is going, because he's on the other side of it.
Well, according to this, Dukat's permanent documentation file represents the first and only time that we see some sort of log kept by an antagonist, unless you count the Mirror Universe people in an episode of Enterprise, apparently. But I feel like that can't be right, but I can't think of an example to dispute it, so...
I'm sure we've seen Klingon stuff at least, but not necessarily as an antagonist.
In my mind, I can hear like a Romulan sort of captain's log, but I think that may actually be from like the game Star Trek Armada.
Oh, sure.
Because some of the intros are for the various species have like voiceovers.
Well, as we all know, Memory Alpha is never wrong about this stuff. So,
so true.
And he said, like, Dukat SG. Is that his initials or something?
His first name is Scrain, so the S, yeah. Maybe his middle name starts with a G. I don't know.
Do Cardassians have middle names? This is new information to me.
Like, we mainly hear about single names, but
right.
Like every once in a while you get, like, an Anabrantane or whatever.
Yeah. So, yeah, Dukat and Damar... head to the wardroom to meet with Kira and Weyoun and discuss the news of Bajorans returning to the station. Weyoun tries to dissolve the obvious tensions between Kira and the Cardassians, but without much success. Kira wants the Bajoran security force reinstated, but Dukat flatly refuses, despite Weyoun's urging to reconsider. Also, Weyoun takes Kira aside and asks her to put in a good word with Odo.
Yeah, it seems like that may be the only reason that he's taking Kira's side in any way. Because, like, Kira's close to Odo, and Weyoun is nothing if not a suck-up.
It's like, just tell Odo that I was on the side of doing the Bajoran thing, so...
I didn't put that much effort into it, but still.
When Kira leaves, Weyoun becomes slightly less cheery, and coldly suggests that it would be prudent for Dukat to run decisions by him first. The subtext is basically... I don't think you really get how this works still. You are a puppet, and my hand is up your butthole. Anyway, why aren't the mines gone yet? And Dukat is like, well, it's hard. We tried shooting them one at a time, but then a new mine just replicates to take its place. And we're out of ideas.
Yeah, Dukat really overpromised heavily when he's like,
right.
Oh, we'll have that minefield down lickety-split. Pretty sure that was a quote from the last episode, but...
To be fair, how hard could it be? I guess just these mines are so magical. I don't know. But Weyoun is like, well, we need more Ketracel White from the Gamma Quadrant so that our entire army doesn't die painfully. You know, the guys keeping you in power and not swinging from a rope in the main square of Cardassia City? Yes, so go ahead and act all smug about that. And then Dukat is like, okay, yeah, I'll take care of it. Like, Dukat, just this whole episode, his just like... inability to acknowledge the reality of his situation is
I mean, I feel like that we've seen that leading up to now also, although we didn't have that many opportunities to see them interact in the previous season, like since Cardassia joined the Dominion. But whenever we did, he seems to have like a weirdly overinflated sense of his own importance compared to the rest of the Dominion.
Yeah, it's like you need to think things through of what will happen if like things don't go well for the Dominion. And you need to like start acting more invested in like our goals.
I don't know if he like never met any of the other groups who were ruled by the Dominion, but like there's a pretty clear hierarchy where it's like the founders are God, the Wayun and the Vorta and the Jem'Hadar like enforce the will of the founders, and everyone else does what we tell them or die.
Right.
So I don't know what you expected.
Remember that? Wasn't it that James Cromwell guy who was like, "Look, just every once in a while, like a Vorta shows up and he tells us to do something, and then we do it. Because if we don't do it, then the Jem'Hadar will show up, and that will not go as well."
Like I don't know what Dukat thinks he's bringing to this relationship to make himself as important as he thinks he is, but
yeah, he's absolutely not doing anything or contributing anything, and like Wayun seems to be doing everything. But yeah, down in Quark's business seems to be going well. But Quark is still working to find his in with the Jem'Hadar. He hasn't quite figured that out yet.
So they don't want to drink or gamble or use the holosuite, but that doesn't stop them from like coming in and taking up the tables,
right?
Which seems weird to me. Like, why are you here?
They like sitting down. They like the noise. I don't know. See, he's got to probe into this. Like, what is the appeal for you? Like, how can I
monetize this?
Yeah, increase your experience, you know?
So you guys like chairs, huh? What if I got more comfy chairs and charged to use them? Like when you go to the mall and they got the big massage chairs.
Like, we know the Jem'Hadar don't have chairs on their spaceships.
Yeah.
So, you know, they're going in there like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And yeah, like, once Quark gets in on that market, like the shiatsu chairs and stuff.
Yeah.
The sky's the limit.
Jem'Hadar ships are like working at a grocery store in the US where it's just like nobody sits. For what reason? We don't know, but they're not allowed to.
You have time to lead and you have time to clean. So Kira and Odo discuss the situation with Dukat and Wayun. Kira mentioning that Wayun asked about Odo, and then they share a laugh, and Kira says she's glad to have Odo around to laugh with. So she's warming up to Odo or something. I don't know. Quark comes by and gives Kira a drink on the house, and he observes that actually this occupation isn't so bad. And Odo agrees, but Kira's still worried about the fact that there aren't any Bajoran security officers.
I do like that they try to be like, oh yeah, Quark, all you care about is your Latinum, and he's like, excuse me, right. I was here for the last occupation. Like, do you see like slaves dying of exhaustion after being worked in the mines out here? No. Well, maybe you should stop being an asshole.
Yeah. It's like, this is actually pretty chill. The Defiant shows up to Starbase 375, which appears to be the same place Michael Eddington was being held prisoner.
I mean, you know, it's the standard design Starbase. What do you want?
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say, you know, it's like, well, they get, you know, the prisons on like level whatever, and then the other stuff is on other levels.
I mean, I guess that could also be true, but no, I think it's just, you know, that they have the blueprints for standard Starbase and they use them.
Sure. Okay. Admiral Ross shows Sisko to his new office and breaks the news that he's no longer in command of the Defiant. He and the Defiant crew have a new mysterious assignment.
Yeah, I love how it's not like he's not going to tell Sisko what it is, but for the drama of the moment on the show, he's just like, you are losing your ship.
Right? While they wait for the assignment, Dax suggests to Sisko that he should call his dad to explain the situation with Jake. Ben worries how his dad might take that news, and he's right to worry, because when he hears the news, old man Sisko is as mildly disconcerted as we've ever seen him.
I mean, honestly, I would be more pissed off that you waited like 3 months to tell me than, you know.
Or, yeah, it's like, to call me at all. It's like, I heard there was a big battle at Deep Space Nine. I didn't hear from you for 3 months. I assumed you were dead.
Right, yeah. So, I love that Barry Jenner, who plays Admiral Ross,
Mm-hmm.
we just saw him, and apparently there's some strong feelings about him.
Oh, really?
It says
Barry Jenner or Admiral Ross?
No, Barry Jenner.
Oh.
It says after Jenner finished shooting, Ira Stephen Bear took him aside and said, "We've had other admirals on this show. We're glad we found you. Sorry it took 5 years."
Oh, okay. So there was good, strong feelings.
Yes. Bear goes on to say that Jenner brings gravitas to the role, and yet you can see there's a man behind the uniform. I think Barry Jenner is one of the unsung heroes of the show, one of the pieces of the puzzle that might not be readily apparent to the audience, but he's part of the glue that makes our job easier.
Huh.
So,
well,
yeah, big fan apparently is Ira Stephen Bear.
Maybe they'll have him back in future episodes. Who knows?
One would hope.
I do kind of have to agree that there have been a lot of dud admirals over the years. So,
well, and then the good ones end up being badmirals,
sure.
Like, what's his name, who tried to overthrow the Earth government? Like,
yeah,
he was good, and but he was bad.
He was an interesting character, but he was doing some not so great stuff. So, and also one time he was a founder.
Yeah, well, that wasn't his fault.
Sure. So yeah, Old Man Sisko wonders if space is so big, why can't everyone just leave each other alone? Which, right on.
Yeah,
right on.
You tell him, Sisko.
War, what is it good for? Peace, love, and understanding. That's what Quark is about.
And profits.
So anyway, speaking of Jake, Wei-Yun is walking down the promenade, and Jake jumps out at him. The Jem'Hadar guards react so slowly that if Jake was an actual assassin, Wei-Yun would be a goner for sure.
Yeah, it seems like it's a bad idea to just pop out at when he's got Jem'Hadar guards with him, but then it turns out that no, they're just completely useless.
Right? But luckily, Jake just wants an interview with Wei-Yun. But Wei-Yun doesn't like Jake's work. It has a decidedly anti-Dominion slant, which is why Wei-Yun suppressed all of his articles. Jake says, "Hey, what about freedom of the press?" And Wei-Yun is like, are you serious?
He's just like, it's practically like, "Oh, you are adorable. Okay, yeah,
Right.
I just want to pick you up and put you in my pocket."
I think maybe I need to show you what the Dominion Constitution looks like. It's slightly different from what you may be used to.
You look at the Constitution, it's like, if the founders say it, you do it.
Right.
That's the entire Constitution.
It's like, It's like, yes, do what the founders say. It's like, oh, okay. Amendment 1. Seriously, do what the founders say.
For real, though. Yeah. It's like, Jake making this assumption that the Dominion is all about free press. It's just, my guy.
And I just like, he's like, the only reason I stayed here was I wanted to cover the occupation. And then it's like, wait, but how does that obligate them to like...
I don't care why you stayed here, Wei-Yun replies.
Like, did they make you any promises? Or, like, were there any, like, false pretenses communicated to you? Or
Jake called them up before the invasion and was like, "Hey, so once you guys take over, you have freedom of the press, right?"
They're like, "Oh, I'll have to check on that."
You just stay put.
That's not really this department.
Just go down to Bajor.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure that free travel between Deep Space Nine and Bajor is still mostly okay.
Yeah. I mean, who knows what might happen if he tries to leave the station, but... So, Admiral Ross briefs Sisko, Dax, and Bashir on their mission. You see, the Dominion, masters of strategy, have decided to store the majority of their Ketracel White, their most sensitive and limited resource at this point, on one poorly guarded facility in deep space, capable of being destroyed by one small Ketracel White canister-sized bomb.
Yep.
Your mission is to do that.
Do that thing that I just said.
Bashir points out that without the White, the Jem'Hadar won't be able to function, and Admiral Ross says, "Yes, that's technically true, in that they will all be dead." Dax says she won't be shedding any tears at the chance to end the war, and Admiral Ross is like, "Oh, thank goodness, we tried getting Captain Picard to do this," and he flipped out, and he started doing a big self-righteous tirade about the horrifying moral implications. No, you guys, I knew you guys were the right people for this job.
Absolutely, the right team for the right job. I mean, look, if you're having a war, the point is to kill the other guys. So,
sure.
is it that big a difference to do it via ship or via what could be
drug
considered
withdrawal.
some sort of like genetic weapon of mass destruction?
Right.
Although, I mean, at the same time, it's not really the Federation's fault that you addicted your soldiers to this thing that will kill them if they don't get it. And so I don't feel like taking advantage of the giant loophole you built into your troops is like their moral responsibility to care about.
This is one for the philosophers, I think. Like, is it wrong to just bomb an enemy's food supply? I don't know. Or water. These things have been done in history. So
I mean, what if we're not talking about like the food supply, like where it comes from, but you're talking about like the supply lines that lead to the war front? Is that different from? Because like that's I don't know.
And they just have no way of going back home to get their supplies. So,
but at the same time, it's like you could argue that like something dedicated for the war effort, like traveling along these supply chains, is fair game, except that all of the Jem'Hadar are dedicated to war. That is what they are there for. So you're and the only people you're hurting by taking out the Catchers All White is the Jem'Hadar. So yeah,
well, I think the important thing to keep in mind is let's just do whatever we want right now, and then let the history books decide whether it was good.
That's how you do it. Have you ever read like the sequels to Ender's Game?
I have not even. I used to have Ender's Game in my classroom when I was a teacher, because some previous teacher left it there.
Huh. But
I never read it.
Oh, you should totally read Ender's Game. It's a very good book that I'm about to spoil for you.
Okay, well, go ahead.
Like the conceit of Ender's Game is like at the end is that they've supposedly been training him this whole time to like lead their forces in the war, but secretly, at least in the latter half of his training, he was actually commanding their forces as they completed the total extermination of an alien race.
Nice.
Because they were like, anyone who knew what they were doing would have hesitated at like committing complete genocide. But because we tricked you, you didn't know, and so you thought it was all a video game that you were playing. So you totally genocided them without worrying about it. And now we win. And it's not even really your fault because we tricked you. It's really more our fault, and so you can feel okay. He doesn't necessarily feel okay. But anyway, right. The later two books in the there's books that follow him, and then there's books that follow other people in the same universe that all branch off of this first book. But the ones that follow him, the other two books, take advantage of like time dilation effects with near light speed travel and take place like 1,000 years or something after this first book. And he's spent he spent a lot of this time traveling around to different star systems, and he's not that much older, but in the rest of the universe, lots of time has passed. And so history, which like right after the war ends, because basically the humans were afraid they were going to be exterminated by this other race because they'd invaded twice and tried to kill them all, and they'd barely fought them off. So they were like, before they invade again, we have to kill them all, which is what they do. And so right after they win, humanity's like, oh my gosh, yay, we're not going to be exterminated after all. We survived. But then like 1,000 years in the future, history calls him like Ender the Genocide, and they like talk about what a horrible like monster he was and this horrible thing that he did. And it's really an interesting look at how the rear view of history really changes things. Yeah.
History is like that. You do your best, and then you get judged by people who will never know what you really went through. So
yeah, I think if Cisco manages to kill all the Jem'Hadar off, then in the future, the people who are not under Dominion occupation because of what he did will be free to talk about what a horrible guy he was.
Yeah, people who have the comfort and freedom to judge him will judge him.
Yep.
And you just got to live with that. Nothing you can do. But, so they're like, yeah, how are we going to get that deep into Cardassian space to do that? And he's like, okay, well, you remember that ship you found on that Cormeline planet, you know, the one where Muniz died, well, we have that.
Yep.
We're bringing it back.
Apparently there's a deleted scene or at least a line that was cut that indicates that they've updated the recognition signal for this ship so that like the Dominion won't know that it's a ship that's been captured by the enemy or whatever.
Sure.
But I guess that was eventually decided not to be necessary.
Yeah, I'm willing to assume that they, like, you know, their Bothan spies got whatever codes they needed, and, you know, you don't have to explain that to me.
I don't know that the Dominion ever knew what happened to that ship, honestly, because it was like they did send this group after it, but all of those people died. Well, no, that's not true.
No, the
Vorta got away.
Die.
You're right. I forgot.
She collected the ashes of the founder and then presumably went home to be like, hey.
Yeah, she magically teleported off of Deep Space Nine, and we never figured out where she went or how.
Yeah. Well, no, she wasn't on Deep Space Nine. She was on that planet.
Oh, I'm thinking of the other.
Yeah, it was
the female Vorta that we met, the first one that we didn't even know what she was. Yes,
the magical orb lady teleported off Deep Space Nine.
Yeah. Who we never see again, and we never see those magical powers she had.
Right.
Okay, sorry.
And they will never be explained.
Spoiler, jeez.
So, yeah, they spend the next 2 weeks training on the now right side up and functional Jim Hadar ship.
Makes a big difference when it works and is right side up.
Yeah. They run through their final mission prep and take turns complaining about stuff. Nog wishes he had a chair. O'Brien worries about having to eat field rations for the next 3 weeks.
I do love Nog being like, there's tons of field rations, those are great.
Oh, O'Brien doesn't like him.
Maybe they're made out of, you know, like bugs or something.
Probably.
That seems like the kind of thing that you would have. Did
Bashir never make his delicious, nutritious field rations he was talking about that one time?
He had better stuff to do, I guess.
Yeah. Dax isn't happy about the lack of a view screen, and Bashir doesn't like the lack of medical facilities. But then suddenly dramatic music starts playing, and the mission is on. Garrick is coming too, because that never goes wrong. Dax smoothly backs out of the starbase, and they're on their way. Asterisk.
Of all the things that they wish they had, if you were on this ship, which one would you want the most? Like, whose camp are you in?
I feel like I could probably live off of field rations. I don't know. I mean, medical facilities sound important, but frankly, a chair would just be nice. So I think I'm going to go with Nog and say a chair. What do you think?
I think I'm with Dax in that, while it's not in any way necessary, it would bug me to not be allowed to see what was going on.
That's true. It could get, like, claustrophobic after a while.
It's just, it feels really condescending to me to be like, no, only I am important enough to see outside. You all just have to listen.
I mean, they could at least put some, like, TVs or entertainment around.
The Jem'Hadar don't believe in TV.
Back on Terok Nor, Dukat is playing with Sisko's magic baseball, and he invites Kira to his office for some creeping.
You say that, and it is 100% accurate.
No,
it's just like there's no other way to say it.
That's not a joke. I'm just telling what happened. Kira, as expected, isn't having it. She calls out Dukat for selling out Cardassia to the Dominion, and he tries to justify his actions. He says he could make her time way more pleasant, and she says he can start by doing something about his breath. Oh. Then she tells him off for thinking that they might have some kind of relationship, and he says, "We already do." And she storms out, and he goes back to playing with the baseball. I want those imagination aliens to show back up and be like, "Hey, where's Sisko at?"
That would be great. What Dukat's imagination would?
Oh yeah, I don't think we want to see that.
No, I want to know what Weyoun.
No, it's just going to be like Odo and a bunch of founders being like patting him on the head, being like,
probably, yeah.
"Good job, Weyoun. You're the best Vorta ever." On the Jem'Hadar ship, the headset thing that doubles as a screen is giving Sisko a headache. Garrick suggests since they saw Dukat wearing that thing, or actually it was a thing kind of like that thing, but whatever. Maybe it works better with Cardassian physiology. So, okay, whatever, why not, says Sisko. Then Nog announces that they're picking up a Federation ship heading their way. The Centaur. That's Charlie Reynolds' ship. In typical Charlie Reynolds fashion, the Centaur immediately starts firing on them.
And with the first shot, takes out their communications, which means that they have no way to talk to him, which is just real inconvenience.
Yeah, that is unfortunate.
Yeah.
Or I wasn't quite clear if that really happened or if just Nog couldn't remember what button opens the channel, but...
Yeah, he's like, crap. I mean, it doesn't work, sir.
We can't talk to them. I don't know what to do. They race across the Cardassian border, hoping the Centaur will give up pursuit. But come on, you know Charlie Reynolds better than that. He's not going to let something as silly as a border get between him and his prey. So Sisko gives the order to turn and return fire. Warning to be careful. Charlie Reynolds likes to swing for the fences. I mean, this is, of all the Starfleet captains we could have encountered, I mean, Charlie Reynolds. This is really bad luck. Suddenly the Centaur flies off. And the reason soon becomes clear. 3 more Jem'Hadar ships have showed up. Bashir worries about Charlie making it to safety, but come on, we're talking about Charlie Reynolds here. He'll make it. He's been through way tighter spots than this.
No, 100% dead.
R.I.P. Charlie Reynolds.
Now I have to look at... let's see if I can find his entry. Yeah, there's Charlie Reynolds.
Like, if we don't just continuously hear the exploits of Charlie Reynolds throughout this war, I'm going to be disappointed.
Charlie Reynolds is featured in the Star Trek The Dominion War novelizations, Call to Arms and Sacrifice of Angels, in which he is portrayed as blonde and bearded.
Okay.
He also appears in Articles of the Federation, a novel where author Keith R.A. DeCandido derived his personality from the Dominion War novels.
Sure.
Also available as a commander for the Federation Alliance in Star Trek Deep Space Nine Dominion Wars, where he appears to be of African descent. So he's all around there.
All right.
Only during the Dominion War, though, so maybe he doesn't make it out.
Is he a blonde African, or?
I don't know. And I went to his memory beta profile, and it's a really pixelated picture that I assume they took out from the video game. But in the picture, he is like bald with dark skin. And then right next to that is the description that he has a pale complexion, a regulation trimmed beard, blonde, and a Nordic nose. So
people didn't get their notes straight or something.
Yeah, well, what can you do?
Or maybe he had a transporter accident that changed his race or something. Well, who knows?
These things happen.
Yeah. We need more Charlie Reynolds, is what I'm saying. Like, you know what? They're mining stuff for spin-offs. You know, why don't we go to stuff like this? It's like, how about Star Trek Reynolds? What's his deal?
Just go. Let's go back to the Dominion War, and we can do something like MASH, where the show lasts longer than the actual war.
It's like a 10-season show about the Dominion War. So in Odo's office, Kira vents about Dukat. And Odo complains about not having a security force to do patrols. In fact, he seems to just sit there in his office doing nothing.
That is essentially what he says, I just sit around here doing nothing.
I guess, like, Weyoun is too afraid to, like, take his office away. So Kira urges him to go ask Weyoun for his Bajoran deputies back. Then Dukat finds Weyoun handing out some Ketracel White to some Jem'Hadar, and observes that Weyoun must love being in charge. Weyoun was like, okay, look, for the millionth time, the Founders are in charge. The rest of us, including you, serve them.
Yep.
But speak of the devil, here comes Odo to ask for his officers back.
And without speaking to Dukat at all, he's like, yep, you got it.
Weyoun was like, yeah, no problem.
I was going to do that anyway, actually. I just didn't have a chance to tell you about it. So it's so funny. I was just coming to see you to say the same thing. We're so simpatico.
Dukat is like, no, actually, I have a problem. And Weyoun was like, no, actually, shut up.
It's a funny story. No, you don't.
It's like, do you honestly think that big office makes you the boss around here? Like, are you that dumb?
He's like, I have the baseball, though.
Right. The baseball is like the totem of the commander. But then Weyoun turns to Odo and is like, okay, well, could you just do me like one little favor? And we soon learn that favor is for Odo to join the station ruling council, along with Dukat and Weyoun. Kira worries that this would legitimize the occupation, but Odo points out he's been in this position before, and now he's ready to know how to game it and make it work to their advantage. With Kira's help, of course.
Oh yeah, of course. Kira's reaction here seems weird to me, and the reason is twofold. First of all, Bajor already has a treaty that legitimizes what is going on here with the Dominion.
Presumably.
Like they have that non-aggression treaty, and as far as we know, they haven't lodged any official complaint about like the Dominion stepping in and because they wouldn't, because you don't want to piss off the Dominion when they're right here. But like this is already legitimized. There's nothing further that Odo can do as someone who really doesn't have much of an official position within the Bajoran government anyway. But secondly, is what Odo already says. It's like, but this is what you wanted. Like, I now have the ability to influence things and make things better, which is exactly what you were telling me to try to do. And now that, like, I've gone beyond what you said and gotten even more influence to try to make things better, you're like, oh, well, wait, that wasn't what I said. Like, it feels really petty to me, her argument here.
Yeah, it was like they needed not a conflict, but like a back and forth for the scene to move things along or something. I don't know. And I it's not clear. Like, so is the arrangement just that, like the Dominion just now has the role that the Federation had on the station, but it's still technically a Bajoran station? Because at one point, someone says this is a Cardassian station, and Kira doesn't like argue with him at all. So,
I mean, that's a fair point, because like it was originally a Cardassian station, and Dukat has definitely been like, yeah, we're taking back this thing that belonged to us. But if that was the case, then like, why allow any Bajoran anybody on board?
Yeah, and like it's like, okay, well, we own the station now. You guys can go back to your home planet, and we'll leave you alone.
Yeah,
we'll be up here trying to figure out how to get the wormhole back open, and you guys, pray to the prophets or whatever you do. But anyway, they decided to go for it, and they seal their deal with the Dylan, you son of a bitch handshake. Then Sisko and crew arrive at the Ketracel White Depot, and Chief O'Brien rigs up one of their empty canisters with a bomb. They set it on a really short timer, and then they beam their Trojan horse over to the depot. But then there's a delay of some kind. And they worry, because if the bomb goes off while they're still trapped in the security net, they're goners for sure. For sure. No chance.
Well, unless they make a plan.
Right.
Obviously.
Yeah, but wait, when the bomb goes off, the security net will go down, and we can fly out as long as we're already moving at just the right speed.
We just have to be faster than explosions.
Right. We have to be faster than the explosion, but slower than the net coming down.
Yeah.
And to calculate that speed, we have the genetically engineered superbrain of Dr. Bashir. So he does the calculation, says they need to start flying at full impulse 1.3 seconds before the bomb goes off. But then the bomb goes off early, and all that was pointless.
Yeah.
And they don't die anyway. But oh no, the core matrix is fried and they have no warp. It'll take 17 years to escape out of Cardassian space. They're stranded.
Really, not that long. I mean, all things considered, moving sublight, I feel like you must not be that far from the border.
Yeah, I mean, you're hardly in a Voyager situation, and if your plan worked, all the Jem'Hadar are gonna like die from horrible withdrawal within the next couple of weeks. And
so really, that's all you have to survive. That's a good point.
But yeah, bum, the end.
So apparently, like, there's a couple interesting notes about like the newly serialized nature here with the big arc. So it says, of the somewhat controversial decision to have the show go semi-serialized, Rick Berman argues, I think the potential for serialization, or near serialization of the show, was always there. If you're on a spaceship like Voyager, The Next Generation, or the original series, you have your family of people who go off and meet aliens every week. But Deep Space Nine was conceived as a stationary show. And we found ourselves developing dozens of ancillary characters, secondary characters, and recurring characters. Those are all different categories, I suppose.
Sure. And
because we remained there, those characters kept coming back. So once you have the tapestry of all these different characters, you have these different stories that you can weave in and out.
Yeah.
I think that sort of begged for a more serialized format, and the fact that the Dominion War became a major part contributed to that feeling of serialization.
Yeah.
So, I mean, agreed.
I mean, yeah, this is definitely like, we're no longer in like, one-parter, two-parter, three-parter territory anymore. We're just like, we seem to be just telling a story now, like chapter to chapter. So
yeah, and Hans Beimler in this next note actually is like, I like this note that starts with, despite the inevitability of the show becoming serialized, the decision to do a multi-arc at the beginning of the season was not one that was taken lightly. So in the last note, the guy's like, I mean, there was always the potential, and now it's like, whoever wrote this wiki note is like, it was inevitable. It was always going to happen. But Hans Beimler says, this was a really big thing for us, because even though we'd done some strange things over the course of the show, we'd never attempted an arc with this many episodes. In the history of Star Trek, it had never been done. None of us came from a series where you did that kind of thing, so this was a new experience for everybody, and we were all learning as we went, basically. It showed us the possibilities and the excitement that could be garnered, and in the end, we liked it so much that we decided to do an even bigger arc later on. There was some hesitation, Irish Stephen Bear says, over whether this was a valid direction for us to take, about whether we were pushing the envelope a little too far. But ultimately, everyone agreed that, and it was tremendously successful, one of the best things the show ever did.
Yeah, and I mean, we've talked before about how DS9 was kind of a pioneer of serialization.
Mm.
I mean, other shows had been like fully serialized before this point, like Twin Peaks comes to mind, but definitely this like doesn't really feel like any other show or a lot of other shows that were on at the time. So
yeah. Well, and it's really funny from our perspective looking back on those sort of discussions where they're like, can we even do this?
Yeah.
And it's like, this has never been done on Star Trek before. Is this like I don't know. And like the pushback that networks had against this idea of serialization, where it's just like, no, if somebody has to watch a previous episode to understand what's going on in this one, they'll just not watch the show.
Uh-huh.
And then you're just proving how very wrong like these ideas were.
Right.
And there's contributing factors. Like at this point, they're still carrying over these concepts from probably at least a decade earlier about how TV has to work. But by the mid to late 90s at this point, most everyone had like a VCR, right, and could record shows. I mean, this is before TiVo, but you could still record shows and watch them later if you wanted. And there was a lot of reruns. There was a lot more networks or a lot more TV stations with cable TV that could do reruns of stuff. And so previous episodes were more accessible than they had been in earlier decades.
Yeah.
And so I feel like it was just a very outdated sentiment that they hung on to for a long time before. Deep Space Nine is one, like you said, one of the first ones that starts to do this and then like cracks it so that, for instance, Lost could come along a decade later or whatever and just like
not even a decade. It was like
pretend to. When did it start? I don't recall now.
It was 2004 when it started.
Okay. So
and we're in 1997 now, so it's like
what I remember mainly about Lost, especially since I didn't watch it as it aired for the first season or two, is like we went to San Diego Comic-Con in 2009, right before the final season of Lost started, and so like that's the time period in my head for Lost is like around then.
Yeah, and like a show like Lost, there is no such thing as a standalone episode of Lost.
No,
and nobody ever complained about it.
I'm sure somebody somewhere complained about it, but it did not stop the show from being wildly popular.
Some old person or Rick Berman or something. I don't know. But,
and so, yeah, you got Lost, you got like Battlestar Galactica, all these shows that came later that like had this tacit, like all of a sudden in entertainment, it was okay to try to do something like this.
On like a network, like, because we were just, I think we were about to start seeing like this, The Sopranos, and like 6 Feet Under and shows like that on like
HBO.
Yeah, HBO. But when that proving it there, and having shorter seasons and higher production values and all that stuff.
Yeah, Sopranos started in 99, so yeah, you're right. It was right. We were getting right up against it.
Yeah, so like all that was like that was kind of like a new proof of concept in the, pay cable or whatever. But
yes, and it's easier to assume that people who are paying for this will make an effort to keep up with it, and so maybe it makes sense that that's a place that you're starting with that sort of thing. But
yeah, like seeing an episode like this where there's not even a to be continued or anything at the end. It's just like, okay, this week's episode is over now, and you haven't seen what happens next. So it's which I think for a modern viewer would be no problem. I kind of wonder what it was like, in the 1997. But yeah, it's pretty interesting, pretty I'd say bold for the time, and an experiment that I think we will find paid off. So
I do like that. Apparently we've come full circle in that the marketing for Star Trek Strange New Worlds emphasized that the episodes would be like standalone when it first came out, and it was like, look, this is like the original series again.
Yep.
What else? What else was close to this time? Alias started not that long after this, didn't it?
It must have been. I do not remember. I want to say it was 2000 at least.
I'm looking. Oh, it looks like 2001.
Okay.
So not terribly long, but a decent amount after.
Yeah, Alias and Lost overlapped for a little bit, I think.
Let's see. I'm looking up like serialized television because like once upon a time, like early on, you had like serialized like radio dramas and stuff.
Uh-huh.
But I guess we moved away from that, moving into television. Like,
right.
No, it's not a. And the X-Files definitely had some.
Yeah. I mean, the X-Files was definitely a pioneer, or one of the pioneers of the kind of halfway format, where it was like with the clear delineation between the standalone episodes and the like main storyline episodes.
Yeah. Let's see. It specifically calls out, in the 90s, American serial dramas included Twin Peaks, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and Babylon 5, starting a trend that continues into the 2000s with 24.
That was pretty serialized, all right.
Yeah, that was very serialized, was 24.
That was like, how far can we take this?
It's like, let's make it as serial as it could possibly be. When did 24 start? Was that like...
I remember it was right after 9/11 because
2000, yeah, November 2001.
Yeah, it started with a bomb on an airplane, and people were a little nervous about that. But Jack Bauer is just so cool. You have to keep watching.
you get past that.
That's right.
But apparently, writing this big arc at the beginning of this season really. Because this was so new, because they'd never done something like this before, it required a change in like how they looked at the writing, because they started out like assigning it out like normal. It was like, okay, you guys work on this episode, you guys work on that episode, whatever. But you very quickly start to realize that like small changes in an earlier episode have a domino effect leading into the later episodes, because the arc is so closely tied together. So, like, it says, we'd had that sort of domino effect happen before to a certain extent, but nothing like this, with all these storylines continuing as a single piece. We weren't used to the rhythm, and it was very challenging. It changed the dynamic of the way we worked, and it changed the kind of involvement that everybody had, because Renee Echevarria or Ronald D. Moore would go away to work on an episode and discover something in the writing process that was going to change everybody else's scripts. So one of them would have to come back and be like, you know what, guys, we need to rethink. And then we'd call everybody together and rethink the whole storyline. And
oh, yeah.
Ira Stephen Barrett's like, yeah, the guys were coming in saying, what are you writing? Are we going to do this? Where's Kira right now? What's Odo doing? Lots of phone calls, lots of people running into each other's offices and saying, should this go before that? But wait a second, does that track with this? And so on. And so the show was not geared to work like that at this time.
Yeah, these days you see like those behind the scenes in the writers' rooms, and they have like the big like season board.
Yeah, board.
With like note cards all over it. Yeah. So I guess they didn't really have that system all worked out yet.
So I'd never considered that before, but that would be... Yeah. Like, you don't always think of the challenges that they'd be facing in the writer's room when you're just like, oh man, look, they're doing something new and awesome. But it's like, oh, this made them need to completely rethink how they were doing the writing, and I didn't expect that.
Yeah.
But good for them. They made it work.
Yeah, totally.
And we're finally getting into the part of that my brain remembers about Deep Space Nine is this sort of storytelling that we're talking about here, where it's just Deep Space Nine was revolutionary because it was doing this sort of stuff that almost nobody else was doing. And it took us this long to start getting into it, basically.
Yeah, and it was just when Dr. Bashir starts doing mental calculations, I'm like, oh, right. This.
Right. He's Data now. I forgot.
All right, so want to jump into reviews?
Let's review.
All right. Well, what do you think of A Time to Stand?
And we've talked at length before, so I won't go into it about doing part of a larger story.
Yeah.
Hard. So this is just scratching the surface of that, and we're gonna have to get used to it at this point. So, I like, and I pointed out before that I always like when we get these continuations of things, when we start moving into, because it's leading us to this. So I like bringing back stuff like, hey, remember that ship? It was important. Here's why.
Yeah.
This was totally the plan all along.
Right. What geniuses they were.
Yeah. And it's interesting to have this perspective on it where it's oh, we're losing this war. Things are going badly. And it's kind of I just rewatched the Next Generation episode, Yesterday's Enterprise.
Oh, yeah.
And you get that moment where Picard's the war is actually going way more badly for us than is generally known, and the Federation's pretty sure that we're going to lose in the next 6 months or whatever, unless something major changes. And we're not quite at that point here, but it is in that episode, that's the kind of thing that would only be happening in some weird alternate universe where things have gone horribly wrong. Now something similar is happening in the regular universe, and it's oh, we're changing things up. Okay. I like the pieces of the episode. We talked at length about how what is Dukat doing? What is Dukat thinking? But I like watching it because it's so insane. And he's just creeping on Kira so hard, and it's I can't look away. This is horrifying. Some people are acting strangely. I didn't like Kira's, and I said it when we talked about it. I didn't like how Kira's responding to Odo here.
Sure. But
she's in a tough situation where she has to let Dukat creep on her because if she goes too far, she could doom her entire planet if she pushes Dukat too far.
I guess if she goes as far as punching a hole in his face or something.
Yeah. And Dukat is just looking for an excuse to turn the screws on Bajor again. When they showed up, he's and next we'll invade Bajor, and Wayne has to be no, we won't.
It's what?
And so, if he can find an excuse to convince Wei-Yun to let them do it, then they probably would.
Right.
But so she's walking a line that's probably making things difficult for her. It sounds really bad given all the praise that I've heaped on us getting into this form of storytelling. Evaluating this episode on its own, it doesn't feel complete.
Sure.
So I can't rate it too highly right now for that reason, where I'm just even in some of the other multi-parters we've had where it was we're rating them very highly, they felt like stories that were complete of themselves, at least to some extent. And so this one does not feel that way. I guess we blew up the Dominion thingy that we were going after. That we completed that mission, even if the fallout from that we haven't seen yet.
Mm.
The stuff on the station feels really open-ended, which obviously is intentional. That's the point.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There's nothing that I can point out to that I'm I didn't like this. But there's nothing that I can point to that's I really loved this either. So it's kind of middling for me, and I'm trying to decide. I think, given where we are in the storytelling of the show, I think I have to take a bigger view and look at it with how it fits into the larger perspective. And so in that way, I think it's a really good start to the season. And I like the things that they've set up. I like the way that we're going. And so I'm going to give it a commander instead of lower for that reason.
All right. Yeah, you're right. It's going to be kind of hard to like recalibrate sometimes when we're not getting an episode that necessarily has like a complete beginning, middle, and end.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a little bit of a brain adjustment, I guess. For me, I mean the Cisco and crew going on their deep cover mission or whatever. It was it was like fun enough. It was entertaining. I kind of prefer the stuff back on the station. That's like, first of all, seeing like the Dukat and Weyoun dynamic where you're like, what? Dukat seems just totally unhinged, but you know Dukat, he could be having these like, he could have a secret plan that he could spring at any moment. Like,
that's true.
That's kind of like what makes him dangerous. And I like seeing kind of Kira and Odo trying to figure out how to like, you know, how to play the game, how to, you know, make moves, how to do some intrigue or whatever. Try to do their try to, you know, make their situation work to their advantage. I'm disappointed we haven't seen Rom the spy yet. But
however he's going to manage to spy, I don't know.
He just walks up to the Jem'Hadar. It's like, what have you been doing lately?
I wonder if he can like communicate freely with his wife's on Bajor. So maybe he can send messages back and forth, and then how freely can Bajor communicate with, you know, they're not part of the Dominion. So are they allowed to like send messages to the Federation? Could that be like a pipeline? I think
Weyoun implied pretty strongly that just all communications on and off the station are monitored and probably censored. So, but I mean, people are coming back up to the station from Bajor. Mm-hmm. I'm sure people can go back down. So there is that like possible vector of communication. But yeah, anyway, overall, I enjoyed the episode a lot. Like, you know, I get what you're saying about how it wasn't quite as satisfying or whatever. And I didn't even think about it that much until you pointed out. But they did, I guess, technically accomplish their mission.
Yeah.
And that part at the end was just kind of like leading us into the next mission. So, or next episode. So, you know, I liked it. I had a lot of fun with it. So I'll also give it a commander.
Okay.
And like, it's like, you know, I don't have very many nitpicks. You know, the things I don't like just this new Bashir stuff, you know, stuff like that. But, and I like, kind of like you touched on, where I like when shows have a status quo for so long and then they like change it up.
Yeah.
And then like, because sometimes when that happens on shows that they never change stuff. I remember there was one show, it was actually 6 Feet Under, when they like did kind of a big status quo shift. And I thought for like the first 30 minutes of the first episode of the next season, that when they didn't change it back, it was, this must all be a dream sequence or something. And then I gradually realized like, oh, this is just where we're going with the show now. Okay. So, what do you think about the title, A Time to Stand?
I mean, okay. It makes sense from a perspective of while we haven't seen them, they've gone into, they've been fighting this war or whatever, and now we're going to start like really taking it back to them. And so I get it from that perspective, and it also works for like Kira and Odo deciding like, we're going to stop being passive and start doing something.
Sure.
Particularly Odo being like, after Kira talks him into like getting into motion, he starts doing things. He starts making moves, as you said. So it works from that perspective. I'm not sure that it's all that memorable or all that clever.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's okay. We've definitely had much worse ones. This was not a standout as like, oh, this is a good one for me.
I mean, because this is another quote from, is this Ecclesiastes?
I was about to say.
Well, no, it sounds like it sounds like it should be, but I was like, wait, was A Time to Stand one of the times?
Maybe not. Hold on. There's a time to stand still.
Okay.
Wait, no, that's from something else. Sorry,
okay.
I googled a time to stand and Bible, and the first thing was actually not related to the Bible at all. So maybe it's not. Yeah, I think maybe it isn't here. Hold on, Ephesians. Here we go. Let's go to Ephesians. Ephesians tells us, "Finally, be strong, so that you can take a stand against the devil's schemes." No, I don't think it is.
All right. Wow. My thinking that I was thinking just now is that this would be a way better title for last episode. Oh. And a Call to Arms would be a better title for this episode.
Yeah, I could totally see that.
I think I would find them both much more memorable if they were switched. As it is like A Time to Stand, it's not connecting for me. So
yeah,
I'm gonna have to give it a lower than a below average on titles.
That's fair.
Yep. But you got any final stuff?
No, I was trying to think of other shows that did what you were talking about with like the big shifts in status quo.
Uh-huh.
And it made me think of, did you ever watch Eureka?
A long time ago, but I don't think I saw the whole series.
Because it's like late in the series, like they'd gotten all the story going, and I was actually really enjoying the show. And then it was like, I forget if it was the last 2 seasons or the last season or what. It was like there was a time travel or alternate universe thing, and they ended up, it was almost like they hit the reset button, and like suddenly all the character relationships were different, and it was almost like they started writing the show from the beginning again, because the main character ends up in either, I don't remember if it was a different timeline or a different universe or whatever, and they just went that way from then on with the show. And I was like, oh my gosh, had they written themselves into such a corner that they were like, we just have to reset everything and hope that works out. And I dropped off the show after that, because I was just like, I had enjoyed where all of the things that we'd set up and where we were going, all these lasting character impacts, and now none of the first 4 seasons matters anymore. So I don't want to keep watching.
Yeah, that happened on, or a show that has a major change is Fringe, where I think in the last season, just they had the observers, who are basically like aliens, take over the world.
Oh.
And so it just became the fighting back against the alien invasion season.
So what I'm hearing is sometimes this sort of thing can work and sometimes it doesn't.
Right.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I always like to encourage people to try new, bold things when they're, I forgot who said it, but it's like, I'd rather people be trying new ideas out there and they don't work than trying stuff I've seen a million times and it also doesn't work. So,
well, yeah, if it doesn't work, I mean, look, if you're doing the same thing I've seen a million times, but you're doing it really well, then right. I'm on board.
Anyway, I think we can call it there.
Yeah, we're going on.
Yeah. So that's our discussion of A Time to Stand. Thank you for listening. If you like that one, maybe you'll like our discussion of The Ship, which you can find wherever you're listening to this, or any of our past episodes or future episodes. If you want to leave us a comment, you can do that on the YouTube version of this. My name is Fletcher. About to say goodbye is Data.
Adios.
We look forward to seeing you next week, but remember, something that I haven't come up with yet.
Perfect.
TBD, to be determined.